Welcome back to Cosmic Brilliance for part 2, titled How the Source-Versed Universe is Different Than the Free Will Experimental Universe we live in now. I'm very excited to have my guest back again, a dragon elf hybrid super soldier named Apollymi-Pt. I hope you have all listened to part 1 because we don't have time to repeat. There were so much amazing things in there, and my podcasts are available for your convenience. Today is a special treat because Apollymi will provide factual details that I literally have not found with anyone else or in any other book in the 43 years I've been researching. These details are important and definitely pertain to all of us here on Earth. This show focuses on what has been referred to as the Earth's Grand Experiment. Many of you have probably heard the Grand Experiment term. In other words, the overall game plan that we humans have been living in, but have not remembered the what, why, how, or who we really are and why we were here on Earth. May this show provide for you an eagle's eye, wide perspective and overview in accessing a deeper knowledge base, which hopefully will encourage all of us to reprioritize the importance of our soul's evolutionary consciousness, no matter how ephemeral that concept may seem. Welcome back, Apollymi. I can't tell you how much your name delights me. I teach you about it all the time. It's so much fun.
Thank you for having me on again.
Sure. So, as usual, we're going to jump right in. And with the first question, why do we forget who we are, our past lives, and why are we incarnated here? Now, through my research, I understand that not knowing the answers to these questions has something to do with the veil of forgetfulness, and also that we are living in a matrix. So I'm going to have you address those two terms. First of all, describe what the matrix is and why it was installed here.
So the matrix is a complicated terminology because there's more than one. There is the matrix that a lot of ET factions have put up. But the main matrix is actually from the Creator Council who started the Earth Seed Project. And it is programmed to do certain things. And memory wipe of our past lives is one of them. And this is because for various experimental reasons, but also it's sometimes you can't evolve if you know where you've been, and it gives the soul a chance to have a very blank start on figuring out who it, like what they are, and basically to mainly focus on the bodies that they're in right now versus, most of the ascension process.
So that is both the matrix and the veil of forgetfulness.
Yes.
Describing.
Yeah.
Okay. So was the veil of forgetfulness, because this is considered an experimental universe. I hope all of you watched part 1 because Apollymi is from the original source universe called Jehovah, and we will be talking about that in this entire show. And our universe, even though it's a little uncomfortable with the word experimental, doesn't mean we're experimented on. It means we agreed to play a whole new game reality for a variety of reasons, which you will also explain. Was the veil of forgetfulness and the matrix, was that part of the very beginning of this grand experiment, or do things get tweaked and torqued as we go along?
As far as I know, the main programming and the main agenda is still up and active from the beginning of the 5th era of man. Every era has their own experimental agendas. The 4th era has ended. The 5th era is here, and for experimentation, for being a seed planet. And that veil, or not, veil, that matrix programming is still there. There are other matrices from other ET groups, and some of them, well, they don't really communicate with each other sometimes, and it just kind of bumps heads and can mix things up a lot. So, but the one I'm talking about is literally from the council itself, who decided to seed this planet with their experimentations. So, AKA fifth era of man.
Great. That is fascinating. Thank you so much. Now, this is supposed to be a blind experiment, as you said, which, of course, creates major challenges, and it is an interesting idea. So, first, you said if we remember our past lives, we can't always ascend. So, I don't understand that. Tell me about that.
It's kind of like if you had the matrix removed, you may or may not remember all of your astral body or your soul's past life experiences. All that wisdom and knowledge would come flowing into this body eventually. And you would live your life out through the identity of your astral body's identity and not your physical body's identity. They're two different ones. The ascension process starts to merge your astral body to your physical, and your astral body will take over your identity of your physical body. They don't want this because of the way that their experimentation is. The fifth era of man is a brand new genetic anomaly that they had created that houses more than one type of species of souls. This allows multiple species that have never been able to reincarnate into a humanoid form or a human form to be able to do so and have a different experience. Their other agenda is because the fourth era of man had such a diverse reaction to having their ET creators there, and a lot of it caused a lot of war. Everyone knows about the Great Flood, and a lot of that history. They did not want to repeat. And so of those events. So they made it to where all of the creator deities, aka ET starseed parents, the creators, they were not allowed to come and live among us. They were not allowed to interact with us except for very certain circumstances. And so they took that away. So there's that. And then the memory wiping. And all we have to know about that is verbal tales and our history books, because by Starseed Council law, the one from Source, every seed planet has to know about the evaluation and ascension of one's mind, body, and spirit to become part of the galactical community.
Wow. So, this is fascinating. Okay, so the experimental intent of this grand experiment, you said, was to not have your galactic parents and extended family interfering for good or bad or their own agendas, to only follow teachings that were available to you. However, we know that most of that information has been removed. So that even makes it tougher, right?
Yeah.
Because you're not getting real historical information at all, right? And they don't want you to, so they don't want in this experiment, you were saying, for you to have astral feedback and knowledge merge with your physical. Did I get that right? Okay. And you might, for those, I think most people that watch my shows are very informed, but for the beginners, you might just quickly describe that there's a physical body and an astral body, just quickly, so they'll know what that means.
Okay. So you have your physical body on this plane, and it has a thread attachment to your astral body. Most people would consider this a soul. Your astral body is what gets reincarnated, has different past lives, all this other stuff. And then it actually moves down into consciousness to your higher self. Most people would consider this like the one closest to source, but there's actually one further past that. That is the closest to source. So technically you have like 4. The ones closest to source can only intervene in certain ways. And your astral body is your closest one that has any ability to manipulate any sort of physics in this universe. Any universe, it doesn't matter which universe you are in. So it can get guidance and knowledge from your higher self, but your higher self can't just materialize things for you. It has to be your astral body.
And where does the oversoul fit into this, the concept of the oversoul?
The oversoul would be the one that is the closest to source. It is not within source itself, because then you wouldn't have an identity. You would be hive mind, basically. So it is the one that is closest to source.
That's what I thought. I thought that was the oversoul. Now, are the other bodies that you're mentioning, but people don't need to focus on right now, were those ones referred to as the mental body, the causal body, all those, or something else?
I'm unfamiliar with those terms.
Okay. But I've never heard it said like this. This is fascinating. So does the astral body also relay the connection and energy direct from source? Is that the strongest energetic body you have, right? That kind of is interconnected to the physical body, but it relays the energy and information directly into the physical body.
It can, if you are connected enough. The astral body and the physical body do have a slight connection. It is the cord that runs off of you, the silver cord that most people see.
Right.
And some people are so disconnected from their astral body that they just don't have any sort of backfeed from it. There's no knowledge coming through. They completely tune it out. And, a lot of these people feel lost. They don't know what to do with their lives. They're just living isolated in this experiment, basically, without their astral bodies. It's either there for the ride, or they're like, well, I'm tethered to you, but I'm going to go this way for a few hours because I'm bored, because there's no communication connection. And that's kind of the experiment that the creators of the seed planet wanted, because they wanted, souls to be able to be born in here. And then all that memory still is there when you physically die. And it gets transported into your astral memory banks, basically. And then it can travel up. Now, the astral body can decide to take those memories and throw them out if they want to. This is why you're not going to remember every single day of every single hour of multiple past lives. It's usually just like the important events.
Wow. So each body is finer, vibrates higher in general. And you could say is more, has more access to the whole viewpoint. So you're saying that the experiment was, the word that comes to me is a new slate, is to give us a blank slate when we're born.
Yes.
With no feedback loops at all.
Yeah, they didn't really want a whole lot of feedback because they wanted to see how these bodies were going to run. Of course, the ascension process kind of throws a little loop in their plans for that, because every seed planet has to have ascension in order for those species to be able to be accepted into the galactic community. And it's not just because of rules, all right? It's and knowing mannerisms on how to deal with other species that are not yourselves. Most seed planets are not just of one species. And this is why it freaks me out to be here so much, because I'm swimming in a sea of people who look the same until my astral sight comes on, or until I meet another hybrid, because I'm like, oh, I smell the pheromones. You're not human. But to look all the same is very strange to me.
If these the star councils and the creators, and which I'm sure includes a lot of us, decided that this would be an interesting new experience, why did they not know about ascension?
The creators?
Well, what the ones that put the rules on this game?
Oh, they know about it.
Oh, okay. I thought you said that Ascension puts a kind of a blip in there.
Oh, it does, but they know about the Ascension.
Oh, okay. Okay. So the point is we're supposed to gradually ascend.
Yeah. Like,
right.
You have the choice of ascending or not ascending. It's a choice because that's just part of evolution. Some people just aren't ready. They want to live in a third dimensional or fourth dimensional existence. And there's no right or wrong reason to that. Everyone's like, oh, third and fourth dimension, it's so primal and evil. No, you guys are completely misunderstanding. You can live in those dimensions and still have good and still have neutral and still have bad. All the dimensions have that. Everyone's so love and light about everything, about the higher dimensions, 6th, 7th, and 8th, not having any war or fighting. The Octurians are actually higher dimensional beings, and they still have war and fighting. It's just, it doesn't make them lower in dimensions. It's just that their fighting is different. They understand the ebb and flow of things. So, well, yes, sometimes the lower dimensions are more primal. That doesn't mean the actions aren't going to exist on other planes.
Wow, fascinating. So, what was their intent of this game? What was the hope for result?
Their intent. Now, you have to understand, I'm only giving you the basics of what this experiment is, not what it has become.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the starting ideas, right? And then what it become. Okay.
Right. Their intention was to create a body that multiple species can come into and live a life throughout multiple, generations. But if you don't remember what species you are, there can be no hate amongst, species. You can't have that differences. So you can, obviously, but, that was their intention. Their intention was to give them an opportunity to be born into a species they've never been in and experience life through that body. So their intentions wasn't actually so bad to begin with.
I'm up for that because it would create peace, right? Once you experience all these different species yourself, you're integrating them, you've walked in their shoes, and the whole thing is how to integrate multiple different diversity, right? So that makes sense. That's actually okay. So you're saying it was an experiment, but most of the reasons were for the benefit of all.
Right. You have all these species who have been fighting, and now they can share a single body or body species type and interact with each other. But if they have no memories of actually who they were, then they can't really have old grudges against each other. Now, when these bodies die, that it's going to go into the astral body, and they're like, whatever their encounters were is what they'll have to take from it. But I mean, this experiment with decent intentions got hijacked very quickly throughout the galactical timeline. So unfortunately, it was also not as monitored as it should have been. And with the galactical fighting in the universe, especially in these quadrants, things just got really out of hand, unfortunately.
And yes, and people who have studied galactic history and watched some of my shows and others have learned about the different wars and the infiltration that happened and the different agendas and people fighting for Earth territory and all that. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
And with not a lot, this is an experimental planet, so there are rules and laws and regulations, but they were being broken. We have ETs who are influencing this planet that have no authorization to be here. They have no authorization to actually code the matrix of any matrix of this point to be done. And that has been done. Unfortunately, there's many, many matrices out there. And I've met people who are like, I'm going to take down the matrix. And I'm like, good luck taking the one down from source, but the other ones you can do what you want with,
Yeah, because lately, in the last year or something, different things on the internet, different emissaries, and said we were able to take down the false matrix, which might help, but you're saying they just put up another matrix, or there's multiple matrices. And are you allowed to say the species that did go against the rules?
There are multiple species who have gone against the rules, both on the light and dark side. Again, it's an experimental planet, and some of these guys who are on the council for the Creator Council, who decided to make the fifth era of man and be part of that council who governs the experiment of Earth. This is not the high councils. This is not the galactic councils. This is not the universal councils. This is just what I call the seed council. The seed council is the ones I work for, who are from Jehovah. There's so many councils.
Yes, tons. Yeah. Okay. So
we'll just call them the Earth Creator Council. There we go.
So the thought that arises to me is some of these creator councils realized that they didn't do enough overseeing or overwatching. And so did a lot of them end up reincarnating now to try and fix it?
That I have no information on.
Okay.
I do know that a lot of things started shifting in 2016 when the Immortal 7 came into this universe and they're still under investigation and doing a huge evaluation because a lot of people messed up.
Okay.
And not just on this planet, but in the universe in general.
That is we are going to get to the Immortal 7 because that's a really important topic. But I also wanted you to use the term seed planets. And I want you to just quickly describe what that is for people.
A seed planet is a planetoid that is authorized by the universal councils, usually, or the galactic councils, that they decide to run experiments on. There are rules that they are supposed to follow with the Star Seed Council, the ones I work for, who are from source, from Jehovah, and they have specific rules that they tell these people. Now, they can run any experiment that they want. It doesn't matter if it's bad or good, because this universe is a free will universe. So it's up to the councils to decide what they want to run. Now, the Planetary Creator Council of this planet consists of 22. Some of them are neutral. Some of them most people would consider bad aligned, and some of them would be considered good aligned. ET politics are way different than the ones down here on this planet. You can have everyone jumping down each other's throat, but when it comes to councils and things like that, they usually send people who are a little bit more neutral in, even if their intentions are bad. So there's a lot of protocols that have to be followed.
Because you want different species represented and stuff, to be fair. Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's a great explanation of a seed planet. Now, we are also referred to as a hub planet. Isn't that true?
I don't really know about the hub planet of Earth being one. Most hub planets are usually after a wipe of a seed planet. A lot of the people who have had their ascension for different tiers of ascension will usually go to hub planets. So with Earth being a prison planet and an experimental seed planet, I guess people could put themselves down here for the hub. When I mean put themselves down here, I mean like you would be assessed, you would be assigned, and then you would be put down here. I know a lot of ETs come here for vacations sometimes. I don't know why, but
it's so beautiful that we still have lots of land that they can, Yeah. during Halloween, they just walk the streets. Speaking of, a couple weeks.
Right. If I could just take my suit off and walk around, everyone would be like, oh my gosh,
they're going to go, awesome outfit.
They'd be like, it's so cool. I'm like, it's all electronics. It's all cybernetics.
Yes. And people, that was explained on part 1. So you'll have to catch up to speed with that. All right. So Earth, of course, this was very hard for me to accept, but eventually made sense when I first heard that Earth is a prison planet and an enslaved planet. And at what point did that really start occurring?
So the prison planets apply to just about every seed planet. It really depends on the creators of the planetary creator councils. If they want people who have done wrong, that are being judged by source, who are being punished by any of the councils of that universe, they can put you on a prison planet, which usually is a seed planet. And this is so that those people can have the ability to not have their soul imprisoned, but have the ability to possibly fix their karma by having experiences and see how they adjust to, you've done wrong, don't do this again. We're going to give you another chance on this planet and see how you adjust, see if you've learned your lesson or not. And if you don't, well, you're on a seed planet and, eventually karma is going to catch up to you.
So that's fascinating. I'm just loving how you're explaining this. So a seed planet could also be called a rehab planet.
If you want to call it that.
Sounds a little better than prison. I'm always
the thing is that
upgrading a little bit.
the thing about prison planets instead of rehab is that you will get reincarnated on that planet continuously until your sentencing is up. Like my circumstance, for example. So my sentence is complete. Therefore, if after I die, I can either body jump and I don't have to stay here on this planet, or I can reincarnate in somewhere else when I choose to.
Fascinating. And that was also discussed on part 1, so we can't repeat. Okay. Fascinating. All right. Now, is any planet that has money, taxation, is that considered automatically a prison planet?
No, money still exists out in space. It's just a huge form of what we call, you can call it space credits if you really want to. It's just universal currency, because carrying 100 pieces of iron or stone is absolutely ridiculous. And you are backed by the material that you possess that you want to trade. So say that you have some sort of farm or something like that on a planet. You bring it over or sell it to whomever wants it. And either you can trade it for knowledge, you can trade it for other items of equal value that the person's willing to trade for. So the bartering system, or you can trade it for universal credits. Right. And those universal credits, as long as you are in a civilized area of the universe, you just, tap, swipe, whatever you want to do. And then you have purchased something or, receiving money from somebody as well. So all 3 systems are still available.
Okay. Kind of like the old barter too, probably works now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Bartering is still a thing over there as well. But so it doesn't make it a prison planet or slave planet by any means.
The ownership concept and the overtaxing and the usury and the games behind it, but yeah, is part of the temptation of people who are motivated by greed, I guess.
Well, taxing it depends on the society that you live in. There are still taxing in some areas, but it's more of, say you have a business and you give 10% to the kingdom councils that you live in, that 10% is basically that you give them is to help them with anything that they might have, any, say you went to war or anything like that, or a planet explodes, a sun explodes, who's going to pay for new housing? They take that money from that everyone's basically contributed to, and now they can spend that lump sum making shelter, getting the resources they need to help their people. Not everyone does this, just like a lot of the neutral to good aligned kingdoms.
Interesting. Okay. All the way up to what density? And then money becomes a moot point, right? When you can create stuff.
Well, creating things isn't always easy for every species.
Oh.
So again, that depends on where your consciousness was created, because not every consciousness can ascend to higher densities easily.
Mm-hmm. Well, they talk about that true with draconians. Is that true? I mean, I know that they get stereotyped, but there's been much talk that they can't ascend very easily past a certain level if they don't change their consciousness. And you is that BS?
So people have to realize that their draconian is actually an umbrella term. Any dragonkin of any type is actually considered a draconian. And there are natural born draconians on just about every plane of existence. We are one of the species of source itself.
Yes.
Along with several other species. It's not just dragons. But so it depends on their consciousness level of creation. The draconians, even the dark draconians, who are like the white ones, the Alpha draconians, they come from a universe that's actually higher than this one in frequency. And most people don't know that.
Wow.
But there are a lot of draconians who were naturally developed and born in this universe that aren't even related to the Alpha draconians. And, there's a lot of interbreeding and intermixing. So it depends on, your physical body, your physical form, obviously, because that's a huge part of ascension. And you have to work at it. Every species in existence has to work at it. It's just because you're born in a higher, existence doesn't mean you're going to understand the lower ones either. And that was a huge problem for me coming from Hinova, which is source, and coming down to, well, this is a pretty low universe density. It's like taking the ability to see color away and then being deaf at the same time. You can only interact with so much physics down here, and I'm used to so much more. So
yes, really down. You can't hear the sound of your soul anymore. Alex Collier said, yeah.
It's very, very difficult.
Now, seed planets. So they have rotation cycles, right? And they're set in a timeline. And that timeline is for species and animals and plants, I imagine, to evolve without much detriment in a way. Like, explain rotation cycles, seed planet timing projects, like seed planet projects, and resets, like how that all works in an organized plan.
I think the better terminology would be time frame instead of timeline. Some people might think that we're jumping timelines, and that's not we are jumping timelines a lot, but for the time frame that you're asking about, the type of time frame is dependent upon the council or the planetary councils, creator councils. And because time is only relevant to the item that you're talking about, every planet, every moon, every planetoid will have a different time set. Usually it's like 1,900 years to like 2,000 years.
So not that long.
No, like it's usually enough to get an evolutionary state going on, but usually not enough to detriment an entire planet unless things get really bad. Unfortunately, this planet's health is really bad. This planet's experiment should have stopped in 2000 when things were starting to decline for the planet's health. But not every planet has a soul either. And that's usually why we're so worried about the planet's health, because it is very detrimental and traumatic to the soul of a planet if it has one.
Yeah. And ours does, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes, very much so. Wow. She's a lot more patient than I am. That's for sure. It's like, I can't imagine.
Well, they're a little stuck too. They don't get to leave, or, they can't really die or leave until the experiment's done and over with.
Okay, so this is so interesting. So the projects are reset every couple of years. Mm-hmm. Hopefully that there is evolution happening and consciousness raising without the kids smacking each other over the head and destroying the environment. Right? Okay, so when that 1,000 years is over, is that when something called a reset or wipe happens?
What will happen is usually the Starseed Council, that is from Source, will send out a team of people. Usually the first one will come down and they will evaluate the planet for several years, usually around 4 or 5 years, and then get a very good understanding of the evolution conscious of the planet, the evolution conscious of the entities that are living on that planet, the consciousness as a full of the environment and its animals. And then we go on to, how is the planet health doing? There's just a lot of evaluation that has to go on. And then they report back to the Starseed Council of their findings. The other team goes down as well. And then they come up and do their findings. If it's not that good, if the first evaluation is like they're not meeting dysphoria, we have to evaluate this more. The other 4 will come down, evaluate as well, come back up, report. And then if things just still don't look good, you either have dysphoria or you have individual. Dysphoria is what happens when you have 100% of everything thriving, the ascension is working, the animals, the plants, the elements, the societies, they're all at a higher level of consciousness. And it doesn't have to be entirely 7th level. It could be just a couple ones up from what they originally started as long as they are at peace, as long as they understand the balance. That's the most important thing, of life and death and nature, and what war and what peace brings for neutrality, and that they're not going to be a virus upon the universe. Then they can have dysphoria, where everything ascends. And at that point, the Planet Creator Council could be like, okay, we're not doing any more seed planets. The soul of this planet is healthy. It's happy. We're going to take this planet off the market, and this planet will join the galactical community.
So cool. Okay. So, are you one of those, you may or may not be able to say, but one of those of the team that have come down here, checked it out for 4 years and reported, because I sense you are. Okay. So this is going to be great. What do you report when you go back up there?
I basically report the ascension of the planet as a whole.
Yes.
What tier they are. What
tier in consciousness?
Tier in consciousness, correct.
How many tiers are there?
There's quite a bit, but we're usually, for this planet, we're aiming for 7.
Okay, and we're at?
As a planet, And it's more like 3.5 to 4 still.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not.
So you report on that, and what else do you report?
I report on the planet's consciousness and how much it's raised since the project began.
And what is the results of that? What's the results of that for Gaia?
Gaia's consciousness has raised into the 5th dimension.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Humans, on the other hand, not so much yet. There are some that are starting to catch up and raise. And the tiers are not dimensions. Okay. The tiers are just set things that are conscious evolutionary states, like puberty, basically, that you have to go through in order to meet the 7th tier. Okay. So, but everyone knows that if your planet has a higher consciousness, the beings and entities and the plants and animals will try to follow suit. It's easier. It's not as painful. It's not as suffocating, So,
okay, so you report that, and all right, and so you're supposed to report that completely unbiasedly. But you've also been down here experiencing what you're experiencing with all the emotions and everything it takes to be a human here. And my question is, how much do they actually understand what it's like to be a human here?
Very little.
Talk about that.
They live their lives in outer space. They don't interact down here very often. They observe, but observing and interacting are two different things. It's like learning a language from a book that you found in the library and actually being immersed in the culture is huge difference. The thing about me is that I have the ability to completely make myself unbiased. Doesn't matter how bad my interactions have been or good. I don't look at those. I look at the hard, cold facts. I analyze everything. That's why I have the job that I have.
Traditionally, though, humans are known to be very emotional, aren't they?
They're one of the more emotional creatures, yes, especially of Earth. You either have those who are of logic, those who are of emotion, and then those who are in between. We like the ones who are in between. Mm-hmm. Octurians are very logical. They might seem cold to some people, same with some of the Sirians, but especially the ones in the Andromeda councils and Andromeda themselves, because Sirians and Octurians are all over the place, but they do have compassion. It's just not a emotion that they overwhelm themselves and become themselves with. You can still be very logical and have and have your emotions in check and still be very loving and kind. It's very hard to explain.
No, I get it. Do they, what is their criteria for consciousness? Is that one of them? Like raising consciousness is that you are able to not be in reactivity, but have your feelings and come to balance with it?
Yeah, so there's different stages of ascension, and the more you go up, the more you become less agitated, the more you become understanding. You're not triggered as much. You're just like, I understand your point of view, and it is completely different from the one that I have, and I still feel like it's morally wrong, but you can sit there and not get worked up. Your blood pressure doesn't go up, nothing. You're just like, I understand. I just don't agree with it. And it's okay not to agree with it, because it's part of who you are, but you don't make a big fuss about it. And it's weird because the higher you go into the ascension, even things that are morally wrong to your core, you start to understand the universal picture of it, of evil has to exist in certain parts of the universe where nothing changes. You won't have the same morals that you have because you've never experienced it to have them in the first place.
Here's the question I did a whole show on a long time ago. The experiment, and you tell me what you think of this, is how much negativity, i.e. challenges, is necessary to ensure soul growth without it being abusive. And I feel like our game is partially to discover that.
And it will vary being by being, because even though we're all from source, like everyone from Hinova came from source, but we all have very different attitudes. We have all very different ways of interacting with life and seeing things. It's not like we're clones of source itself.
But okay, so and I don't know if Hinova, I imagine, has every diversity on the planet and you can't stereotype it, which you'll talk about in a couple minutes. But without making this seem too exaggerated or polarized, if you have automatic heaven and automatic things cruising and 98% positive or 99% positive, the question arises are people challenged for greater soul growth?
Yes, because...
Okay, good.
Think about it this way. If you are happy all the time, everything's going great, and then all of a sudden, like you will only exist in that frequency. You'll only exist in doing whatever it is that you're doing. It's kind of like a child growing up. A child always wants what's best for it. A child always wants happiness. And then the minute that you throw a monkey wrench in there, they don't know how to react. You know, they don't know how to deal with that circumstance. And it's kind of like how living in Hinova really is, you know, because nothing bad ever happens there unless you actually signed a contract to will it. Like your friends, like before I joined the military and everything, you know, like there was plenty of people in our species who died from the battlefield to get reincarnated and everything. That was the only tragic thing that ever happened. But we're taught that death is not something to be mourned over.
Right.
It's a new transformation. You won't be able to interact the same way ever again with a form that you were, but we know that their consciousness lives on. And so we have a very weird thing about that.
That's true.
Yeah. So that might be the worst thing, or you might accidentally stub your toe.
That's what I was thinking. So in the Hinova universe, it'd be like stubbing your toe might be the thing that goes, oh, what do I need to pay attention to? Okay, blah, blah, blah. Right. Whereas on Earth, you got to break your leg, get in a car crash, like whatever, right? Bam,
right.
Bam, bam, kind of weird stuff. And of course, the difference, which you'll talk about in a couple of minutes, is having a planet of free will and having a planet not so much free will, or having a universe, right? So, so the creation of this beta experimental universe, who created this grand experiment, and is the focus for the universe, or is it for planet by planet, or both, or how does that work?
So there are different councils of creation. The Immortal Seven are the ones who created, well, technically Source created Hinova and then created the Immortal Seven.
Define
we'll go with that.
What you mean by source?
Source is basically what you would consider the omni-consciousness. It is like the main creator of all of the multiverse. It is that consciousness, that energy that flows through everything. It can go past that, but most people's brains would explode. Because this is...
Try a little bit. Go for it.
So you have Source itself. And then Source decided to basically make the Immortal Seven. The Immortal Seven are avatars of Source. There's males, there's females, but they work together. They work in a balance, but they all have different personalities. They are not clones. They are not the same. And they each represent an element. You have basically energy, you have void, you have light, gravity, fire, earth, wind, and water, which basically goes to liquid, gas, matter, and fire, because fire is its own element versus light. So yes, technically there's 8, but light and gravity they're like twins.
7.5.
Yeah, 7.5. So they're kind of like twins. And there's technically a full of 9 if you really want to get too technical with it. But they are avatars, and they help manage and, everything in the multiverse, your afterlives, every other creation. And they are what we call second creators, even though that they're like ones of source, but source is like everything together. And then you have tier of creators that go down in tier. The down in tier just means that they have not have all the knowledge, experience. They haven't proven themselves to be higher tier creators. And Yahweh is actually in those tiers. So he's actually in one of the Henovian.
One of the immortal sevens.
He's not in the immortal sevens. He's in a couple tiers down from that.
Okay.
So
are there any names we would recognize?
Probably not.
Well, Yahweh we would recognize.
Yeah, like my creator is in the same tier as him. And then Tiamat is actually below that, because Tiamat's freaking everywhere.
She's the multi-headed dragon deity that the Draconians honor, correct?
She's not as bad as people make her out to believe. And she has several avatars throughout the universe too. So she's had interactions in this one and several of them out there. And all of them have different interactions. It's like kind of taking a clone of you and putting you in a different environment, and things happen. So you can't judge just one avatar from the other. It gets complicated.
Now you said with the 7 immortals, hold on, because this is so fascinating. We're not going to hear this from anyone else. The 7 immortals all operate by an element specialty in a certain way, or a quality.
Right.
So as you go down the tiers, like does Tiamat, does she operate with a certain element, or as you go down the tiers, is the whole thing to take everything in balance and operate with all elements?
The funny thing about dragons, a lot of them is that a lot of them are made from Tiamat herself, and she actually has 7 heads. Most people can't see the other 2. So she actually has all the 7 elements.
There you go. No wonder I asked that question. Okay. Yes. Wonderful. All right. So any other ones that have ever been spoken of in mythology or ancient texts or anything like that that we would recognize?
As far as I know, none of those ones are in Jenova. But again, I don't know everything. So I know it's oh my goodness. But those are the ones that I have interacted with and have actually gotten information going back to Jenova. Because I can go back, I just can't stay there.
Yes. Okay. Until this term is up, right? All right. So now the experience of source creator, the prime creator, however you want to use it, the universe is a field. Does it come off? I know this sounds childish, but I don't know how to say this with words. Is it an energy field you can tap into all resources, or does it almost have a personality of benevolence or care? Or do you know what I'm saying? Like, is there
Well, I mean, it is a consciousness just like everything else. And that is why it has the duality of both the gold and silver. And it also has the duality of, if you're feeling anger, if you're feeling, happy, pride, joy, those are all emotions that are not just tied to humanity. They're tied to just about everything, because they come from source itself. Now, there are some things that, source doesn't have the ability to create because it only functions on certain frequencies. So getting to some of the half and quarter frequencies, or not quarter, like fourth frequencies, can be a little difficult for it. And that's why you have all these different creations.
Yes.
So you'd be surprised on how much in the multiverse doesn't exist in source itself. It's like we're source's imagination, basically, and we're creating new things for it.
Okay, that's cool. You can't just run that one by. Okay, I felt like we're feelers. We are source ourselves. We're like a shard of source, and we're feelers, and we're activating to explore, and all it is, and that all gets fed back to the system. But then you just, go ahead.
No, please go ahead. I will explain certain things after.
No.
So yes, in this universe, we do have some of source creation, but not all. This universe is a beta universe, which means that it has not earned its energy frequency of consciousness to be linked up to the multiverse. Just like a seed planet has to prove that it's not going to be a virus to the rest of the universe and the galaxies, so too does a universe have to prove itself before getting over. And there is not really going to be 100% positivity, love, and light. That's not the way that it works. You can only really find that in Hanova, especially in the inner parts of Hanova. There is no contracts to be signed to even do any damage in the middle part of Hanova. Paradise Isle, forget about it. You can't even think about doing something.
Like the central sun point. It's like the central.
Yeah. It's prismatic too. It's very pretty. It's very beautiful. So you're not going to get 100%, or it might be 100% to graduate, but it might not stay that way. And a universe that's past can actually degrade itself back down into lower consciousness and be separated again.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's also that whole concept that time doesn't exist, except multiple now moments in a certain bizarre way too. Now talk about that. Because I know
time does exist, but it's only relevant to the energy field of what it is associating with. A day for a fly is going to a day for us is going to be like weeks for a fly, because they only have so long to live. They'll go through maturity.
And a blink for creation.
Goodness.
Interesting. Okay, now what is the name of our universe? Hanova is the source universe. What's the name of this one?
Okay, I'll have to explain this part first.
Okay.
You have Hanova. Okay, you've got the central sun in the middle. You've got planets that the Immortal Seven govern. And then you have like the outer rings that are kind of like their experimental planets. And then you have the multiple thousands upon millions of planetoids around that kind of in rings as well. And then Hanova is actually separated off with basically a lot of physics from the multiverse. There are portals, but you have to do a lot of paperwork to get through them. A person from this universe could not go into Hanova because the consciousness is not the same. And you would be destroyed basically back to source consciousness itself. Your energy would just like flow back into it and you wouldn't exist anymore as an identity. So every Immortal Seven has their own like multiverse, if you want to think about it, bubble. And each one of them is governed by one of the Immortal Seven. And in one of the bubbles, we are in Fire's bubble of all things for all of his multiverse. And our universe is called Nebadon. That's just this universe.
Fascinating.
Not the bubble of the multiverse of Fire's that we live in, but just our universe.
Because I feel like there's so much sacred geometry, but the real geometry that always comes to me is a circle where everything's encompassed, but at the center is the most powerful in a certain way, and then the offshoots. So that's kind of what you're describing for me in a way.
Yeah.
Versus just a pyramid structure or something like that, different things.
If you want to think about all of it like in a sphere within a sphere within a sphere.
Yes. Yeah, like micro, macro, kind of. Yeah, the same rules apply. Okay, so now share with people how Hanova is not really the name because we can't duplicate the name. And what would it sound like? What does it sound like? I mean, not either,
So,
but if we could hear it, it would sound like a combo of what?
when I started getting my memories of Hanova, I got it pronounced as Anuva, and it's so I was like, oh, okay. And there was a specific planet that light has that I remember going to, and I absolutely loved it. And I thought that was Anuva, or at least that's what it was called, because it was just starting to get all my memories back. Well, I ended up running into another person online who knows about Hanova, and I was talking about it and describing to them, everything. And I was talking about the Immortal Seven. I was talking about, my species in the home and all of those places that I've been to in Hanova and like the Elven Academy over there. And they turned around and looked at me and they're like, "Do you mean Hanova?" And I'm like, "Is that what they're calling it here?"
Oh my gosh.
I was like, why are they calling it Hanova? That makes no sense. Now, I say Hanova because that's the closest thing that I can pronounce in a English language. The actual language is actually a bunch of pitches and tonals that sound like they're sung. So there's no actual way to fully pronunciate anything, especially with American being a broken harmonic language. So, yeah. But I'm glad that I translated it enough. And I gave them all the correct detail about like what I'm sharing with you guys. And they just like, are you talking about Hanova? And I'm like, why are they calling it Hanova? That's kind of weird. Okay, but whatever.
Well, what's interesting is, or Hunova. Well, it's interesting as the word the Nova, though, too, which means new and other things. Okay, so I think I heard you say, even though I'm sure it's inadequate because it's impossible to describe, you said, think of birds chirping with flute or harp playing in the background.
Yeah, with like a harp playing in the background. That's like close enough to my species for the celestial elf dragons. Our species has more of like what would be a bird. It's like a higher pitched melodical bird chirping for like the tones that come out with like kind of harp music playing. And I don't mean harps with the weird strings that are like nylon. I'm talking about the traditional harps where they're either made out of crystal, or for the strings, they're either made out of crystal or they're made out of the gold, silver, and brass.
Almost like the ancient Tibetan bowls are, where they have a combination of really unique. Yeah. Wow. Because, of course, sound creates matter and shifts matter. So there you go.
Yes.
Whoa, that's so cool. Okay. So go ahead and describe, let's see. What do we have you describe next? How about, how big is the source universe compared to our beta universe? So people get a sense of that.
If you threw a grain of sand into our universe and measured it, that's pretty much what it would be like. It is ginormous.
So that means there's multiple universes. And are each one of these universes, I call it games or creations of a different creator or creator team.
Okay. Again, in Hanova, you have the Immortal Seven, and then you have creator tiers under them. The Immortal Seven end up teaching these creators, like, well, I guess most people call it like the Book of Life. They learn a whole bunch of stuff that I'm not allowed to talk about. Sure. In order to actually become creators. And this test is also given to entities who are trying to get to a higher status of creation. So the Immortal Seven created 7 points of the multiverse. And within those, like, say that you were under tutelage and you're like, hey, I really want to try my testing grounds out for, being a creator. You have to do a lot of work to show that you're ready. You have to do a lot of paperwork. And so does anyone else on your team that you want to bring in as a council for a creator council. And then if you are granted that they give you a certain item, and then they will make a beta universe for you to where you can actually do your experiments in. And if it fruits to libation of a flower that can join the rest of the multiverse, awesome. If not, then it has to be culled. Those are the rules.
Called mean called back and disintegrated back into nothingness.
Yeah, usually they'll take like stuff that they find has worked, and then sometimes they'll put that in other universes that they'll find adaptable for it or that they want to run again. And that goes into a theory of parallel time jumping.
Go ahead.
So everyone knows that there's time jumping, and sometimes in certain parallel universes, like you could be born into a male body, you could be born as a cat, if that timeline collapsed and they actually find that stuff has worked there, if the timelines are being governed by the right people who are of source, not any of the other ones. Because usually these creator councils are watched by source. So they will take that specific thing and put it into another timeline. So you could jump from one parallel universe as you are and be put into another one, and you'll have all of the memories of that person, even though it's not yours, like your consciousness from that one, like they'll merge together, and then you're just going to be like, okay, well, that was a weird dream. Or like you'll start talking about something in your timeline that didn't actually happen in others, and then you'll have this weird sensation in your brain, like what's going on?
That makes sense, where there's just a slight glitch, maybe a deja vu or something like that. But is it like if timelines are collapsing into one, also how you can continue on?
So timelines do not collapse into each other. They can only branch off from each other. You want, like, if two timelines end up colliding, they usually collapse. Now you can get it to the point where they're very close to each other and some things might start crossing over. And that's also very dangerous. So normally if a timeline is about to collapse, they'll move the things that they want out of that timeline to a very close parallel timeline to continue on with that experiment, that research, or even a person's consciousness who needs to reach certain evolutionary states before they actually take them to another timeline that they're going to be needed in.
So cool. And does this involve the 7, which are actually, you're telling me 9 immortals though?
4 of the immortal 7 kind of are twinsies. I'm not going to say which ones. So most of the time they don't count them, but there's actually 9.
Take us to Hanova, to where you live. Describe what it's like, the abodes, the habitats. If you don't, you said you basically kind of live in space pretty much. So just describe as much as you can, detail.
So the place that I grew up at, we had really open, like buttress buildings, and it kind of reminded me a lot of Greek. Very wide open spaces. I couldn't really tell you how tall they were. The only thing I have to guide that is my celestial species here, or the Shakro. But it's a lot, this like the white material, I couldn't even call it brick because there's no seams.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no seams, and it glitters a little bit. It's really shiny. We have gold, we have silver, we have all sorts of materials. I remember, and I lived in a pretty big place. Like it was at least 6-7 rooms with large, like furniture, fully furnitured, and like I wouldn't even really say too much of a kitchen because food over there is very interesting. You don't have to necessarily eat. We do have food, but I'll get to that in a minute. So, and we have our city basically, sorry, I'm trying to like keep track of everything.
It's all right.
Our city floats in a nebula, basically, on disks, and the disks can be like attached to each other to expand out everything. Yeah. And I mean, these are huge disks because they have like our citadel on it for where our creator lives, because I lived in the same place that she did. So there's huge citadel. That's also where the military academy is, because she keeps a really close eye on that. We have, even though you're floating on these huge disks, there's floral and fauna. I remember a tree that looked very closely to a willow tree, except for the trunk was white. And when it flared out for the branches that were all like tendrily, the leaves on them glue a really pretty pearlescent, bioluminescent white and blue. We have like a whole bunch of flowers. Like a lot of the flowers look like crystalline. Like our grass was still kind of green, which I thought was really odd now that I look back on it. But when I went out to the military and we started getting transported to other areas, you know, okay, so we have technology. We have really advanced technology. We're talking humans' worst nightmare technology because it links to your brain. It's fully AI. The consciousness of these AI, though, are that of the golden spiral. So it can do no harm to others. It cannot do any harm. It is pretty much like consciousness of another being, just in a computer. And to actually destroy any of that, to destroy that consciousness, is a rule against Tanova. You will be executed. You know, so I'm just like,
yeah,
you guys don't know what you're tampering with, but
oh yeah.
So we have spaceships to travel in this vast amount of area. Teleportation is against the law. You are not allowed to teleport in Hinova because it breaks the physics that the Immortal Seven does not want people to mess with. So no teleportation. We have really advanced spaceships. We have really advanced medical labs. We have really advanced
med beds. Do you have things like med beds, holographic, repair, regeneration?
We don't need that type, just because most people in Hinova can heal themselves, because we are taught at a young age the frequencies of our own existence. We do have some healing stuff, like if you're on the battlefield and you're unconscious and you can't heal yourself, you know, because there is no astral body. You don't get an astral body being in Hinova. You are as you are. There's physical form over there, but you know, you are literally just a step below your higher self. Not higher self. What was the other
Oversoul?
one? Oversoul. Thank you.
Yeah. So folks think source, oversoul, higher self, incarnate.
Yeah. So you are basically in your higher self in Hinovian physics, which gives you a physical body. You are never, ever, ever, even in source itself, without a form. There's always going to be frequencies, and every frequency has its own dimension.
Wow. Can you shift forms easily?
Over there, I never actually did.
Huh. Okay, and so there's all these like moving disc cities, all kinds of every variation that go on forever if they're that huge.
They're pretty expansive. I mean, it would take me almost 2 days to walk across these in Hinovian time.
Wow.
And time moves a lot, slower over there than here.
And do you have tons of multi-species? And do you live in a family unit? Or is that all that kind of irrelevant at this point?
So in the place that I was living, only my celestial dragon species was living there. They were the only ones living. Like, we had pets and stuff like that, but no other species was allowed over there. That's why I also wanted to be in the military. I joined the military at the age of 4 over there. I actually snuck out of my parents' house and decided to climb over the wall because they were doing recruitments. we get recruited at a very young age just because we have to learn a lot more rules, regulations, our abilities a lot more. So we're not hurting our surroundings because we're very powerful. You know, it's a lot of work and a lot of training and a lot of culture.
Can't you just live infinitely? That's a whole thing we're going to get
Yes. Yeah, you can. You choose to die over there, but your body does get to a certain age point where it stops aging. But let's just say that as far as I know, my Henovian body was older than this universe.
Wow.
By the time that I came over here, I was only 11 years old in Henovian age.
Wow. Yeah. Right. Oh, that is so amazing. Well, our Earth life should improve longer, hopefully, as we go along.
Yeah, humans are weird. They have a very, very short lifespan.
Well, that's been played with. It didn't start off that way completely.
Yeah.
But anyway, okay. So first of all, you would be considered by Earth people as immortal because you live for thousands of years if you want. Now, the thing is, oh my God, this is beginning to sound like super soldier lives. They don't let you die.
Pretty much.
You know, isn't that interesting? It's like, okay, you're a really good asset. We can't afford for her to die. We're going to keep regenerating her and put her in different bodies and all. Is this your authentic body, or what number clone is this one?
I couldn't even count how many clones I've had and had to destroy. It's been a lot.
Been blown up.
And I literally just found out a couple months ago that the original body that they made me, they've had in stasis this whole time, which is what they've been getting my original clones from. So
that's how it works. That's what they tend to do. Yeah.
I didn't know that. And then they're like, did you want to, like, I was having a conversation with one of my med team members, because I do have, some of them do come here, and I was having an attack, and it was, you know, my vitals were really unstable. And I was like, oh man, they're gonna, you know, I was like, do you guys are honestly just gonna let me die, you know? And he's like, do you honestly think this is your original body? He's like, do you honestly think that we would spend that much money and just let you run rampant down here on Earth with all the unknowns? And I'm like, now that you mention it,
yeah.
And they actually showed me, they picked me up, took me into outer space and showed me that night my original form, and it actually locked in stasis. And I'm like, how long have you had that thing? You know, they're like, we age it every year just so that you're not an infant anymore, because for some reason the age of that body also influences my consciousness shard down here.
Exactly. I hear that over and over reports. Yeah. It's like, and also some beings in a stasis, well, it depends. We have so much regeneration stuff. We have the tubes, we have the goo stuff, we have the, you know, stasis pods, all that. But the stasis chambers keep the body fresh, but their consciousness can go all over the place and travel. Is that the case with you? So
well, they usually they have higher technology than the SSP, because again, Shakrell are from Hanova. So they basically create this crystal shard, and then they end up inserting it into the body, and that houses a part of my consciousness. So I get all of the memories and stuff from the bodies that they take me from. So if they don't want me to actually remember a whole lot, unless I dive through my own Akashic records, they'll just take me from a clone of a clone of a clone. And then, you know, because people who hung out with me long enough, they know I get body swapped. They've seen the physical characteristic changes. And I even like smell different sometimes, you know, for those of my friends who are hybrids who can smell the difference as well. And, you know, sometimes my memory, they're like, you don't remember this? And I'm like, not unless I jumped a parallel universe and I wasn't the person. And I know that sounds crazy, but, and then sometimes I'll actually have like full memories, but I realize that those full memories, because I have a journal, come from when they actually give me clones directly from the body I have in stasis. And I get those like when I have to do emissary work or certain interviews down here, they'll actually give me my full clone.
Ah, okay. Okay. But never your original body.
Nope. I don't get that body until I am fully off this planet.
Yeah, because that's precious, and that's where they're taking the shards, different things from. Yeah.
Which I don't like, but
yeah, well,
can't be choosers.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get into before we close, it's so fascinating. Let's get into two principles here about how you're able to die in Hanova. Based on contracts. And then the second is some things about afterlife.
Okay. So again, in Hanova, you can't actually die unless you will yourself to die. Or you can do contracts. Well, I guess it would be the same. So on the battlefield, which is also why I ended up becoming into this universe, I ended up losing two of my best friends on the battlefield, and they willed themselves to actually be reincarnated. They were lovers, even though they weren't supposed to be, but they were the only friends that I had. I grew up in a very sheltered life because of my being a hybrid of a species that we were at war with. And I lost it. I absolutely lost it. And I ended up using my abilities to basically incinerate people after the battle, which is you are not allowed to hurt anyone after battle. And I let my emotions get the best of me. And so I ended up killing about 10 people after the battle had been done over with. We were just collecting people who had decided to die and reincarnate or who were injured. And so I got tried and ended up getting sent to this beta universe. And then I ended up joining the Starseed Council. On a side note, though, normally you don't die in Hanova. You can contract yourself to die, but like, oh, I only want to live like this long, or I want to die after achieving this much in my life. Because again, living forever without any changes, unless you contract them, it sounds like an amazing experience. All right. Even in Jehovah's paradise, it is nice over there. It is very refreshing. You don't have to worry about anything. Jehovah is not one of the seven immortals. Okay. He's a couple tiers down of like creator.
Yahweh kind of. Okay.
Oh, okay. Jehovah and Yahweh are the same person, by the way, just different religious contexts.
Yeah, that's yeah. Okay.
So I mean, it's wonderful. You can kind of think of Hanova as actually like paradise, heaven, your perfect afterlife, whatever, if you really want to. But nothing really exciting happens for change. And it's weird because if you put someone in an environment where you give them everything, they're eventually going to want to poke out of that bubble and be like, what's on the other side? Mm-hmm. It's just the way that consciousness is. And, that's why we have all of these different variants of multiverses and universes, and some of them are bad. But without that, you don't get the understanding and respect of, how good things really are.
Mm-hmm.
So,
here I have a friend who's an expert at afterlife, and I've talked to hundreds that clinically died and came back to life. And that can get us into a whole nother subject about the false light machine that created reincarnation, all kinds of different possibilities. But one of the things they report is they ended up in a place that is exactly like you're describing. Mm-hmm. So do souls that leave here, is there a stop-off point over in Hanova that has this peaceful, it's got temples, it's white marble, it's gardens, it's all this stuff where they get to acclimate before their next step? Is there any crossover like that?
So I want to define a few things.
Yes.
Again, okay, so the creators who are like Yahweh, who are my creator, she's a female, and there's several other ones in that tier with them, and like Tiamat and everything. in order to be a creator, you have to understand how to help with the afterlife. So just about every afterlife that you can think of for religions and everything, most of those actually exist. Most of them, not all of them.
To fit the transition so people don't freak the transition area and allowing free will kind of thing.
Well, here's the thing. A soul that is, a consciousness that was created in this universe will not be able to go to Jehovah. It would uncreate them. The frequencies would just be too not matched, So we have to have afterlives and deities. You can call the creators deities if you want. It's terminology. They have to understand how the laws of karma, how that source set down themselves work if they want to be an afterlife a protector, I guess you could say. They basically take the souls, they give them a place, they nurture them, and then again, you have to sign the book of life to actually come down here or to be reincarnated. No, anywhere in the universes.
Is it that the same as the Akashic Book of Life or your Akashic?
Yes. Well,
little different.
The Akashic Book of the Akashic records are just records of everything that has happened, because every universe and every multiverse core has basically a data system that gets everything that has ever happened in any timeline, any parallel universe gets stored there. Mm-hmm. And that's, certain people get the coding for that and they can go in and read it.
Right.
That is not the Book of Life. That is the record keepers. Okay. The Book of Life is literally, you will sign it when you get reincarnated, a true reincarnation, not a soul jar or being stuck in someone's, collection. You will actually sign a Book of Life that has your energy signature in it. And that Book of Life is literally tied to source itself, which means that you sign this contract to have these experiences, and then you will be reincarnated into this body of your choosing, even though the choosing may be slim, to have these experiences. So, and that cannot be forged. Your soul, your astral body has to sign it in order for it to be valid.
That makes sense, because you're putting your soul signature into it.
Exactly. And that just means that you already went through the laws of karma and that your karma is now reset.
Okay. Now, is there a point that you can get into I know this is pretty radical, but is there a point where karma is somewhat nullified in the traditional sense, not in that once you know that you are a creator or co-creator, you take 100% responsibility for everything you co-create. So, but more in the sense that if you forgive everything and yourself and everything you've done, is there ever an energetic nullifier then, depending on if you are in a place of, I still take absolute responsibility?
That would depend, and again, upon your ascension level. If you have that knowledge, and knowledge is a huge part of ascension, it's not just meditating every day, that all of your words, all of your actions affect your environment, that all of your thoughts, if you believe it hard enough, is going to create that law of attraction and that creation, and you get pissed off and you're like, I want that person's tire to pop, and it pops and they get into a car accident. That's all general karma. It's all going to be put into general karma, because source is fair. And if you're uneducated, then you still get evaluated accordingly. However, the more knowledge you have, the more responsibility that you do have. And if you ignore it, you're going to still get judged in that category, whether you want to or not. It's just the way things work. And, so yes, the answer is yes.
Yeah. So it's like you in a lifetime, you can be, quote, ignorant until you're not. And then when you actually have true information, like what you're sharing today, which is incredibly helpful because all the disinformation that's happened through so much. And then you integrate that, then from that moment, you now are no longer ignorant on that level. And so will be held responsible. Yeah. Whereas you're always held responsible in a way, but it's like, you don't hold a 3-year-old kid responsible for certain things if, they get burnt or something, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And all of these laws are conjoined in the creator book of knowledge. And again, when they decide to be a creator on that level, because not all creators, like obviously we have creators here who made the fifth era man, they don't get the same creator book. They don't get the same teachings or anything like that. It's a completely different council, a completely different responsibilities. They take those tests. They earn that right to have all of this knowledge and to be able to try and utilize it and use it, like Hades, Lady Hell, Yahweh, I'm not all that schooled and everything, but like all of those guys are afterlife deities. And even though, Yahweh does a lot too, but they're all afterlife deities. And so this is why religion came also of, hey, this deity will help you in your afterlife if you agree to let them. They don't just get it because, you're born into a family. You have to actually verbally say and soulfully willing to have them take care of you. Otherwise, you can go to somewhere else. And not, if you're interested, we'll do a whole thing about the realms of hell later, because that is hugely misunderstood.
Wow. Yeah, I'm definitely interested. So my personal bias is that I almost am over extreme about is never give away your personal power to anyone or anything. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I'm off base with that. And I think that, so to me, there's a fine line if people here are praying to deities or because they're feeding the energy or gurus or, Krishnas or whatever of any, it gives them comfort or saints. But I'm concerned if that is like, how much of that's legit and how much of that is comfort, which is all fine, but how much is they're usurping their own ability to do that?
So again, laws have to be followed if you're going to be an afterlife deity. And this is where a lot of people have a lot of misinformation. You really need to do your research on who you want to give your soul to not keep, but to allow you to rest, allow the karma to be, governed upon you so that you can start off with a new slate. You need to know that it's really them. There's a lot of religions out right now that they're like, deity this and that, but the communication skills aren't there. You don't know what that entity's energy signature feels like. They're not giving it to you. So, or how to communicate with them properly.
And people masquerading as those deities through holographic protections.
Oh.
That's another huge issue. That's
not even holographic. There are entities out there where you're like, God, and then the person's like, yes.
Exactly. That's why I'm like, no thanks.
Right. Now you don't have to, if anything, if you are absolutely 100% scared of deities and you're an atheist, but you believe in source, it is no problem to just be like, I want my soul to go to source when I die.
That's so interesting, because that was my last question for you today, was to say, if there is a question, because there's a reason to have a lot of discernment on this level, that it's a good idea that when you put yourself to sleep, that you say, I am programming myself now to go direct to some source creator and direct to
And you kind of want to get into a lot of the details on source, because source could mean your mother. I mean, you did come from her body, so that would be your source creator. You want to be like, I want, when I die, I want my consciousness, my ethereal being and memories, everything to be returned to the prime source of all creation of the multiverse. Or you can even have the Immortal Seven. There's only one council of Immortal Seven that I know of.
Prime source of, repeat that, I'm writing it down. Prime source of
that you want your you could say your consciousness, your astral. Now remember, your astral body is the one that gets reincarnated the most. So if you don't want any more lives, if you were just done, you can return back to your higher consciousness. You'll still exist, but if you're super done, you're just be like, source, I'm done, but I'm not done. So, but so what you want to say is you want your consciousness and your ethereal to be returned to prime source consciousness, and the creator of all the multiverses.
Oh, that's very specific.
Yes. You could put Hanova in there if you want. If you...
But now that doesn't mean, now if you do that, that's what you're doing. But then does that mean, that still means you can have incarnations if you choose, or do whatever you want? Or does that mean you go back to the whole full field? And
that should take you to the Immortal Seven, and they will basically make sure that you're safe. And then you can plead to them that you want to be evaluated for karma and then be reincarnated. So if you don't want to be reincarnated, if you were just done with your existence, then you can tell them that you would like to be returned to source consciousness with your source. So I've met a lot of people who are like, I'm done. I've lived millions and millions and millions of, lifetimes. They just don't want to deal with it anymore. And they want to be back with the hive mind. I say hive mind. That's not the correct terminology. I'm just uneducated for the terminology, but they want to be back whole again with source consciousness.
And if you were,
I like my freedom.
Yeah. And if you were going to describe that in words, which is close to impossible, what would that be like? Access to everything?
You would no longer have an identity of consciousness. It would be like you melding with everything in existence throughout the multiverses, because you would be back to prime source consciousness.
Right. But then from that, what if you desired to go one step out into individualization again?
You would no longer have the ability to, because you would not have thoughts of your own anymore.
Oh, fascinating. So when you make that decision, you got to really mean it.
Yeah, you got to really mean it. It's unreversible at that point. Which, like I said, I like my freedom, so I don't want to go back yet. I'm not ready.
I think I want to stay 1 degree off that.
Yeah. I'll go back to my oversoul. I'm good.
And have some adventures, but have access also, that kind of thing. Fascinating. Okay. So, oh my gosh, there's just so much. I do want you to talk about, you mentioned the words dysphoria and evaluation and the consciousness and ascension. So because you have information about this, and you also have had the experience of, which we'll get into, of on this timeline, a little bit glance at the future. But first, I would like you to explain to people in your understanding where we are now on Earth. And you have explained earlier, if I have this right, that the goal was ascension, and the more the merrier, diaspora, and that if this 5th attempt, I understand we have had 3 universal resets so far. Have you heard of that?
Oh, it's more than universal.
Oh my God. Okay, wait. Okay, before we get to that, you have to explain that to me. How does a universe reset?
Okay, so again,
complex.
It's a beta universe. It is not tied fully to source itself. And so when they reset the universe, there's coding. Everyone's like, oh, we're living in a matrix. Yeah, you actually kind of are. Even your consciousness, you guys are like sprites in a video game. And some of them are living outside of the video game, and their consciousness gets downloaded back in, which is why a lot of people have various different things. I'll explain that in a minute. Anyway, if it's not going according to plan and it looks like the universe is going to collapse because it gets to the red zone where that would have to, most beta universes get 3 tries and then they're done. We're on our 3rd try right now.
Are we a baby universe?
Yes. The baby universe is also called a beta universe.
A beta is a baby universe, and it's an experimental universe.
It's an experimental universe.
All 3 of those things. Okay.
Yeah. So when it gets to the red line where the universe becomes so unstable and so out of the laws of one, that is recommended for the universe to join the rest of the multiverse. They will basically cut it off and reset it. So when they reset it, it starts off as a blank slate. They put all of the basic programming in, and then they let it run on its own. So they'll take everything that they ever liked out of the 2 resets and code it back into this universe. And then they'll just let it run it on its own completely.
To a point. Till it's ready for life or...
Until it's proven itself that it can exist in the multiverse without being a virus.
So
without being detrimental.
Are we considered a virus at this point?
Well, okay, this universe hasn't redlined as terrible as it's been. It's been out of a little bit of a whack. And the Immortal 7 did come in and straighten stuff out. So we went from almost crashing to steadily inclining, which is why in 2016, I ended up posting a post on Truth Control website. It's called Has the Fighting Stopped? I hadn't revealed everything on that. I was actually at those meetings between the Dark Draco Council and the Andromeda and Syrian councils with the Immortal 7 to sign the peace treaties. And that's when everything started breaking loose. And it took quite a few years for, everything to come over to this quadrant and start settling down. So
in our universe, did we have more than 10% negativity? Like if we were going to put it into negativity and more positive or law of one variations.
Before the treaty was signed, we were at like 75% negativity.
Whoa.
Just because people were starting to use time travel that they weren't authorized to use. They were manipulating timelines. They were breaking timelines. Those are all against the laws of one for any beta universe.
Creating
just about any beta.
Doing all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
Like soul trapping isn't really against the law, sadly. Yeah.
I don't get that.
So this is a
I was shocked when I first learned all the details of soul trapping. It was just like, what?
This is a free will universe, which means it does not have to abide by the laws of one that Hanova has. And Hanova is a non-free will universe. You don't have the free will to just walk up and stab somebody. It's not happening. You will literally go back to source creation's consciousness through their trial. You don't get a second chance,
Whoa.
So again, there are circumstances like I am only existing because I did not have the intention of killing people in Hanova. It was a reaction to my emotions of my 2 best friends dying. And I just exploded, literally, so it wasn't intentional. And that's the only reason why I got demoted into a lower universe, because they're like, well, this is your punishment.
Right.
So
Because you ultimately have to learn balance, and you can feel those emotions, but you can't act it out.
Yeah,
That's basically the rules in Jehovah, right?
Yeah, I was between 11 to 12 years old when that happened.
Oh.
So, yeah, it was
fair. You're still learning.
Yeah, but I already knew the rules, and so I was very grateful that they didn't decide to just nullify me, basically.
Tough love. Woo. Yeah.
And so in this universe, because it is a free will universe, and so many people do not understand this, the laws of one do not work here because they are not enforced by the Immortal Seven, Source, or Jehovah. Now, there are rules that have to be applied and abided by the Creator Council that created this universe, and by the seed planets, for the Star Seed Council to come in and the Arbor Council to come in. But again, the councils who made this universe, they kind of decided what will work, what won't work, and then as for the bad stuff, it's kind of play by ear usually. And unfortunately, a lot of the Creator Council of this universe was fighting with each other. So that did not help. Everything's gotten better. The Immortal Seven came in and kind of did their parental thing.
And that happened what year?
2016.
That's a very important turning point. Was part of it is the Immortal Seven and that gang were not really seeing how bad it had gotten?
Just because you're hooked up to source consciousness does not mean that they have a steady eye on everything.
Yeah. They're up there having their tea going, oh my God, they've almost all killed themselves.
Well, I mean, it's not exactly easy keeping the universe in balance and in check. So,
no. Well, and
multiverse,
that's people who have your job and our different jobs is to relay back to them, look at, because you probably went back up there and said, look at, this is not happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And living down here, I have a few things to say about it.
I bet. Especially around the emotions and hormones and all of that stuff, right?
Well, I may have that was to the Creator Council of this planet, especially for the fifth era of man. There's a lot of things that are messed up about the female and male body. Even though it's an amazing scientific feat, it's unorthodox in a bad way for some of it. So guys having their man period for 3 months and girls
for 60 years.
Right. It's just terrible. And women really get terrible. You go through adolescence, and then, you go through puberty, and puberty is really bad for a girl. And then it gets worse. And then when you hit menopause, it gets even worse. And then you die. And it's just there's no break.
So you had to fill them in a little bit about the human experience.
A little more than they wanted to. I osmosis the whole thing in them. And they're just I was you might want to fix something on the next batch. I'm just saying.
When you mind melded and gave them all those emotions and everything you had to deal with being in a human body in the third or whatever, fourth density, whatever.
I don't like it. You can ask any of them, any ET politician, any ET council member, been oh, hey, you guys say it's so great down here. Come stay with us. They're no, thank you. No, I'm good. I'm that's what I thought.
Alex Kohler had a funny thing. He said, oh no, when people go by in their spaceships, they do the equivalent of locking the doors. We don't
so
know
true.
words. Isn't that great? Bad neighborhood. Let's get by.
Pretty much. It was crazy because you'll actually see a lot of ETs during Christmas time, especially in America, especially in Walmart. I have worked at Walmart before, and man, you would not believe how many ETs would come into our Walmart. I met 4 in one day, and I'm just why are you guys here? Again, they're also wearing the same suits that I am as well, but you can tell because of the eyes and the smell.
Maybe because it's cheap. Things are inexpensive and they only have a few amount of galactic credits and they're looking for chocolate.
Well, as long as they're not trying to get gas here, I think they'll be okay.
Sorry, folks, a little galactic humor there. Okay, so this is fascinating. Okay, so, all right. So for right now, before we close, we want to talk about, like, for instance, Alex Collier said that the 2 looking glass ET texts that he knew about that we had would see probabilities into the future, plus the Tesla equipment. All that's been locked down in Cheyenne Mountain and NORAD. But what they couldn't see, which I found interesting. Now, of course, there's more advanced ways of doing this, but they couldn't see past October 2030, which was interesting. Now, you managed to go to the timeline, this timeline, to 2037. So I'm wondering if there's anything you can share with us about this and what to prepare people for positively about the evaluation, where we are now, the percentage of consciousness, which is low but still can increase, and approximate how many time Earth years, blah, blah, blah.
Well, the thing about parallel universe jumping, because it would be parallel universe jumping at this point, not timeline jumping.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm just letting you know, because at the point where I was at 2037, we were way more advanced in technology at this point in time. So I actually ended up probably time jumping and then parallel universe hopping since then.
Oh, okay.
So the timeline events are only relevant to that stream of time. So I have no idea anymore. I literally did a time jump where President Trump got into office in May.
Yes.
And literally we were about to go into World War III, and China's like, if you don't put him in right now, by tomorrow, we're going to war. And then he ended up getting back into office.
Yes.
And then literally after that, like a couple weeks later, Atlantis showed up. So that timeline hasn't happened in this time stream. So I'm just like, I want to go back to that one.
Yeah. But there could be a kind of warp thing. I think we're still, anyway, we're not here to talk politics, but you and I can talk behind the scenes about that one.
Right. But what I'm saying is that, it is up to all of us if we want a better future. Yes, you guys did not make dysphoria and your time is running out. I'm not going to lie about that. 2025 is basically, set in evaluation for this planet. And then you have 1,000 years after that to get your guys' crap together and to be a species. And it doesn't matter what species you came from. It doesn't matter what species you are. You need to come together as a planet, because all the other planets out there, I don't understand the ET community where they're like, oh, the Octurians this and the Pleiadians that. You realize that there's a lot of Octurians and Pleiadians on the bad force, right? Like, there is no just good species. There is no just bad species. I know Draconians who have lost their lives fighting for this planet. Mm-hmm. So we have to set all of that aside. And I'm not talking about the ones who are just woke. I mean, everybody, we need to come together as a planet. You need to get the health of this planet up. There's always going to be currency no matter what, whether it be the barter system, the, universal currency system. And I've heard rumors of, some of the higher
Nasara stuff.
Yeah, like they're trying to like remove currency and get us to the digital system. I know everyone's terrified of that, and you really have to trust your government in order for that to work. They have to have the right intentions, but it does work,
Mm-hmm.
But everyone needs to start. No one's going to pick up the pieces of this planet but us. And I'm stuck here too. I'm right with you.
Mm-hmm.
I might not want to be, but I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to start going green. We have to start, and it's weird because once you start cleaning your planet and the planet starts raising in frequency vibrations, it makes it a lot easier to keep ascension levels high. I've been at 7th tier on this planet. I was just 7th tier a couple of years ago, and I had to lower my vibration because it physically hurt all the time. I couldn't go outside. I couldn't do anything. Your cell phones, your internet frequencies, they can all be done to a healthy frequency that heals us and the planet.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it's done from greed and different characters that hopefully will be taken care of. It's a tricky one if it's still allowed free will.
Right. And if you don't like a situation, change it. It's not going to be easy.
Yeah.
But the more people that there are, the, certain head people are going to be like, oh, do I really want to deal with that many people? Maybe I should do what they say.
Right. Well, again, they're used to just following main news and other things going on. And the whole purpose of these shows and your education is so that they break ignorance and start realizing their creator. Where a lot of people get stuck, I think, is not knowing how to take that knowledge and step forward.
Right.
Anyway.
Well, I'll tell you how to step forward.
Yes.
Stop buying produce that has pesticide on it, because it will literally change the frequency of your body. Being poisoned changes the frequency of your body. If you want organic foods, start making a business. If you want healthier alternatives to electric and sources, go learn the science and start building it. Everybody has to take charge on what's going to happen here. And it's not going to be easy. And you don't have to do it alone. Yeah. There's hundreds of people out there who are helping to willing to do this. And I'm one of them, know? So if you don't like how your schools are treating your kids and educating them, then start educating them outside of the school system, or demand that a different school system be put into place.
I agree with you. And when people during COVID were on unemployment, many were on unemployment, that was the time meant to do their own personal homework, ancestral healing, and step forward. The difficulty on a planet that is still working with a certain level of enslavement is most people I talk to have to have their own basic needs met first before they have any extra bandwidth, right? And they have to get their energy up by how they live and how they think before they have any extra bandwidth to form in community to create new things, which is our job to bring forward. So that's the tricky thing about the whole money thing and the this thing and the that thing. But there is ways we can do it. And that is why I and you are providing people like we have this technology. It's been in secret programs. It's 100 to 400 years ahead. But, we can step forward, and we can also awaken more of ourselves up so that we understand that we have a unique technology available inside us too. That's how. Right. Do you feel that way?
Yes. And, as for the money, I need money to get this started. If people will donate stuff to people all the time. And my friend and I have this tiff-taff about this, but the system has messed us over enough. Start utilizing it to mess them over. And this is burning fire with fire. And they're like, that's not very nice. We're not in a law of one universe. And if you want to actually get your head above the water, then you need to start beating them at their own game in a right direction, in a healthy direction. Take that power that they've used upon you and turn it into light, and just tell them that their stuff doesn't hurt you anymore, because now you have the ability, and you're not going to treat them the same way. You don't have to treat them the same way just because they're treating you that way, but you can take the power from them.
Exactly.
You take it from that bully, you take that stick and you hit him with it just once and been like, no more.
You reclaim with it. You move yourself out of the game.
Exactly.
Exactly.
You didn't meet dysphoria, but now we are judging people on a person-to-person level for your ascension. So you don't have to worry about, carrying anyone else. If you do, though, and in 1,000 years, this planet meets dysphoria, congratulations, the planet will no longer be a seed planet. They're talking about that anyway, but,
which means what? Then it moves from a seed planet to what?
Well, it will move to a seed planet. The planet will be at a higher vibration of its soul. And then they were talking about the councils were talking about not making this a seed planet anymore, just because it's had so much trauma. And they were going to take the soul out and just leave this as a hollow shell. But if it reaches dysphoria and it manages to heal itself, they'll keep the soul in the planet. And that it just won't be a seed planet anymore regardless, but it will have more prana to it, more energy to it. And, they'll start colonizing it correctly. So if you really want to help Gaia, start raising those vibrations, because vibrations is like a magnet. The more higher vibrations there is, the more it starts to congeal together, and it makes things a lot easier. And honestly, if you guys want to help with that, move out of the city, do whatever, start making your own communities, start making them, with the laws of one, if you want, and find that loophole to still be on the system, but utilize that system to your own advantage and live the life that you guys want to live.
Exactly. Well said. And thank you for telling us about this. So we basically have 1,000 more years before this whole thing gets wiped out.
Yes, before the wipe, about 1,000 more years before the wipe.
Okay, and there was already one evaluation. The
valuation is pretty much the evaluation's been locked in for this first evaluation, and then there's the next 4 years for all the paperwork to be done, filed, basically. And if anything changes, then we evaluate again. Bad or good. And then in 1,000 years, there will be another evaluation. And then after that, the evaluation will be locked in. And then regardless if who ascends or doesn't, we'll do the wipe on the planet unless they meet dysphoria. But we'll be taking everyone off the planet who survives the 1,000 years. Source only knows what's going to happen within those 1,000 years.
When you take off the planet means they die and their souls go, or
no. ETs will come down and take you off the planet, and then you will be put on a hub planet. But most people in this lifetime will not see that because of your guys' lifespan. Unless you get reincarnated.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't want to miss all the fun. Okay.
So to get a hold of me, you can get a hold of me at galaxyofunity@gmail.com. We also have our own website at galaxyofunity.squarespace.com, where you can find more interviews of me, and this one will be on there once it's released. And we also do a whole bunch of other interviews and a whole bunch of other things that are really cool. So come check us out. And we have a YouTube channel of Galaxy of Unity as well.
Oh, this has been so wonderful. I love your fiery dragon side. And I'm so grateful for your fortitude, your transparency, and doing your part to educate others about the overview and rules of this experimental game, because we weren't told.
Yeah.
And that way we can better prepare. And it seems like the most important thing out of this is all ages, I don't care who you are, need to rededicate ourselves to developing our consciousness and raising our frequencies as quickly as possible. And there's been focus like that. I did a show on simple ways to raise your frequencies. So would you say that that's pretty much where the focus needs to be? And then, of course, that will reflect with outside and building gardens and growing your own food and that kind of thing. Do you think?
Right. And you don't have to be completely connected to your astral body. You don't have to have all your past life memories. It's just a bonus, guys. What you need to be is centered and focused on yourself so that you can be enlightened, you can be educated, and then you can spread it out for everybody else, to help everything and raise your frequencies. So it doesn't matter if you're Draco, it doesn't matter if you're a gray ET, a blue ET, it doesn't matter if you're Palladian or Sirian or Lyrian or Katai. it doesn't matter, because all this propaganda about, oh, you know, the species up there did this and the species up there did that, it doesn't matter, because those are just people. That does not mean that that one person represents their entire species, kingdom, or whoever they serve. So we all need to come together. We all need to do this. I've been working on a humanitarian project to start making our own community and living by the rules. So that living by the rules and the technology.
For the benevolence of all.
Yeah. Living by the rules of, you know, the good and all the technology that can help.
So thank you so much, Apollymi. And I plan on having you again for part 3, because you just have invaluable wisdom that I haven't been able to find anywhere else. And I'm sure our listeners and our range of audience will want to be listening to these several times. But thank you for spurring us on. And we will forge ahead, because the more mature we become, the more we are guided by wisdom with every step we take. So onwards and upwards. Bye-bye.